Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. Then I will say, I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Kind of a worrisome passage that Jesus would basically turn away people who look at themselves as Christians, who consider themselves to be Christians. Now, who does this point to? Probably a number of people. Uh, but one group that I would be very concerned about if I were in that group are people that hate Jews, so called Christians that hate Jews. Let's just put it this way. If you're a Christian and you hate Jews, that is not going to age well. Imagine you're kneeling in front of the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, and it's Judgment Day, and you've got to explain to him why you hate Jewish people. That's not going to go well. And I hope you're not found in that position. I don't want to be in that position. I don't want you to be in that position. So why do people hate Jews? It's crazy. All the hatred of Jews is it's not natural. It's supernatural, and they're political things and economic arguments, but really, it's mostly just illogical because it's supernatural. It's not natural. And if you're a Christian, or you think of yourself as a Christian, profess yourself as a Christian, um, you're really professing to be, you're being part of a Jewish religion. You can call it Christianity, and that's fine, but it's really Jewish. I mean, Christianity is a Jewish religion. Um, it's or based upon the Old Testament, the Jewish Tanakh. And if you read the Old Testament, I consider myself an Old Testament Christian. My faith is rooted, largely anyway, in the Old Testament. There's so much going on in the Old Testament that points to Jesus. There's so many times Jesus appears in the Old Testament, not referred to as Jesus, but it's a man and he's God and he's in the Old Testament. I'm going to call him Jesus, okay, or Yeshua. It's very clear. In fact, I tell people the Old Testament, lots of it makes no sense whatsoever until you have the key, and the key is Jesus. For example, what is it, Zechariah 12:10, I think it is, where um, God says, "You will look upon me, whom you've pierced, and you will mourn for him, as one mourns for an only son." How do you pierce God? Oh, it's been done. Yeah, yeah, in the form of Jesus. But that makes no sense without having Jesus. It just, in fact, it's often translated in a way that tries to make it sound like something else. But my understanding is the most accurate translation is essentially what I've just read. So we're part of a Jewish religion. And uh, to hate on Jews, I mean, first off, Jesus was Jewish. His earthly mother, Jewish. His earthly father, Jewish. Most of his friends were surely Jewish. His disciples were Jewish. The writers of all the scriptures that he referenced were Jewish. The Tanakh, the Old Testament, and also the future scriptures were going to be written either entirely or almost entirely by Jews. Possible exception of those written by Luke, which would be the Gospel of Luke and Acts. Even that is somewhat disputed. The disciples, again, all Jewish, and yet you hate Jews. Not a good look. Not a good look at all. Um, they'll say, well, the problem is the Jews killed Jesus. What? Really? No, the Jews had a hand in killing Jesus, and so did you, and so did I. I mean, if we believe that Jesus died for our sins, then I'm partly to blame. So are you. No, we weren't there nailing Jesus to the cross, but neither were the Jews. He was nailed to the cross by Romans, so maybe we should hate Italians too, right? No, we shouldn't hate Italians. In fact, if you're going to have guilt by association, some things that our ancestors did, then we're all in a lot of trouble. We probably should just hate everybody because none of us have ancestors that did nothing wrong and did not do awful things. I wish we all did. That's just not true. So blaming them for killing Jesus is really not a good reason. When you take a very small set of people, a subset of the population, and blame them for everything that went down that day, and you take that blame from this, small percentage of people and apply it to all of their descendants, including the descendants of people who were believers in Jesus. There were a lot of believers in Christ at that time. A lot of them that recognized Jesus as the Messiah. And even today, there are tens of thousands, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of Jewish believers in Yeshua. So even today. Now, the other thing that people will say, well, we don't really have to care about the Jews because we replaced them. It's called replacement theology. I don't subscribe to that. I don't recommend you subscribe to it because I don't think it's really accurate. I mean, the idea is that believers in Jesus have replaced the Jewish people as the new Israel. And we've been grafted in, that's true. We're part of that Jewish religion, we're part of Israel. But the Jews haven't been forgotten about. If you don't believe me, go to the Bible, right? How about the book of Revelation? It refers to the church in the first, was it 3 or 4 chapters of the book? Never refers to the church again. Refers to the Jewish people over and over again. But why would it say the church in the first few chapters and then never again? It's almost as if the church and the Jewish people are separate, and Israel is separate from the church. And if that's not enough for you, look at the 144,000 servants of God that have to be marked before some of the judgments are put out. And these are 144 servants of God. And they are from the tribes of Israel. And and if you think that maybe that's like a generalization, well, the tribes of Israel, that's us. No, it's not. It talks about each individual tribe, 12,000 from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 from Reuben, 12,000 from Asher, on and on and on. It specifies what tribe we're talking about. So the idea that the Jewish people are no longer the chosen people, it just doesn't hold water. It just doesn't. So now maybe the Bible's not good enough evidence for you that the Jews are still God's chosen people and that we shouldn't hate them. By the way, even if they're not God's chosen people, we should still love them. We should still pray for them. In fact, we should pray for the Muslims. And on a daily basis, we should ask God to open their eyes and to recognize the Messiah, turn away from their sins. But since the Jews are God's chosen people, um, well, we do it either way, right? So if you don't believe that they're the chosen people, let's look at the evidence. And you don't want to look at the Bible, obviously, because that kind of offended you probably. But let's look at just evidence. I'm a skeptical kind of guy. I like evidence. I like proof. I don't just believe in random things because it gives me a warm feeling. I want evidence. And I'm a Christian because the evidence is overwhelming. About the Jewish people being God's chosen people and still being important and not being entirely replaced by the church, well, Just look at the fact that the Jewish people even exist. After thousands of years, they're still a recognizable people. Um, and I know there are people that will say, well, they're not even really the Jews. I don't know. Why are you hating them then? That's an odd argument too. But there are people that will try to claim they're not even Jews. Um, I would disagree. The Jewish people is still an identifiable people group, and the prophecies and the promises that God made. You think He's gonna break those promises now that the church has been formed? I don't think so. I think God's pretty good about being true. I trust in Him. Worked for Abraham, so why not? Yeah, I think that the prophecies from the Old Testament, like the fact that the Jews were going to be spread to the four corners of the earth. Now, there were also exiled into obviously Egypt and to Babylon, but those were specific areas, not the four corners of the earth. This means the entire earth. And in around 70 AD, after the temple was destroyed, most of the Jews were dispersed all over the world. Every country has Jewish people. Even the Arab countries, by the way, which is odd, but I guess they're going to be a little courageous to live in some of those countries, but they do. So Moses also said not only would they be dispersed to the four corners of the earth, but they would be brought back. And so after 1900 years, um, uh, based on a number of interesting situations, including World War I and World War II, you end up having the Jews coming back into the land of Israel. Now, there were Jews in Israel that entire time, but they were few and far between, so to speak. So they come back into Israel and fulfill that prophecy, which if they're not God's chosen people anymore, why would we care? Why would that prophecy be fulfilled? Why would Israel coming back in a day? Because basically it was came into the world as a nation in one day when it was recognized as a Jewish state, largely firstly by Harry Truman. And so in 1948, it became a nation again. Why would that be the case if they're not important and they're not God's chosen people? But that's not enough. That's not enough evidence. What about the existence of this tiny little speck of Israel? I mean, Israel is a nothing town. I mean, it's just nothing. It's when you look at it, the surrounding area, look at the size of Israel. It's nothing. But keep in mind, God made the entire universe from nothing. So nothing, when it's in the hands of God, is a little more than you might expect. But it's a tiny country. Everybody says it's the size of New Jersey. And if you look at surrounding Arab countries, it is, I don't know what the percentage of it is comparison, but it's probably like 1% the size of this, if that, of the surrounding countries. So it goes into existence in 1948. And there's a war, basically oversimplifying, but the surrounding people, Muslims, Muslim nations, said, we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth because they're Jews and we don't like them. And so you have this fledgling country and you have all these big countries around it that are well established, and they get into a war, and what do you know? Israel wins. Now that's illogical. That's not normal. There's no good reason for that. Are the Jews such great tacticians and great warriors that all these other countries had no chance? Well, I think they probably are pretty good at those things, but no, I think the hand of God was very much involved in that. If you don't believe that, let's go to 1967. You have the Six Day War. It's called the Six Day War because it lasted 6 days. You knew that. Yeah, you're pretty smart. In any case, it's the same scenario. You have all these countries around Israel, and they say, let's wipe them off the face of the map because they're Jews and we just don't like them. And the short story of that is 6 days later, the Jews have put it to them, taken back land, taken back the Temple Mount, and taken back much of the city of Jerusalem. And then you go forward to the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and it lasts 3 weeks, and um, basically they're still there after that. And then you go to October 7th, and granted that war lasted a much longer time, but you have these people over and over again trying to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. And it's, you always think of Hitler, and that's one, killed millions of Jews. You have Stalin, you have the Romans, you have all the countries um, around Israel at one time or another. You have more recent times, you have Iran, you have Hamas, you have Hezbollah. They openly state that their goal is to wipe the Jews out. They want them gone. That is genocide. What happened in response to October 7th was tragic, but it's not genocide. I mean, when I say tragic, when you talk about civilians, children, women, civilians being killed, that happens in pretty much every war. And it did happen, uh, in the war following October 7th. But that largely is because the aggressors decided to hide behind women and children, quite manly. And of course, that's going to get women and children killed. But killing terrorists and inadvertently taking out some innocent people, that's not genocide. It, just not. Um, and then we have, the illogic of hating the Jewish people and the illogical nature of, well, for example, Queers for Palestine. You have these people that Palestinians, Philistines, Gazans would like to kill. So you're gay. You go once you go over there, and you will be killed. But no, you're going to protest Israel because you hate Israel because you want it to be free of Jews. Get rid of those pesky Jews from the river to the sea. Let's just get rid of them. Yeah, yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And your logic is absurd. And that's how logic is when it comes to hating Jewish people, or really reasons that are supernatural. They're evil. They're from the devil. They're from the pit of hell. So you have that. So you have this people group that shouldn't exist in a country that shouldn't exist that still exists. And it's because they are God's chosen people. And we should support them. And I know some people say, well, who cares? I'm an American. Um, why should America support Israel? Why should they worry about their wars? Well, because their wars are, in a sense, our wars. Those countries that want Israel dead, they also want us dead. Okay? They want to destroy the United States. I mean, Iran has said many times that Israel is the little Satan and they're going to destroy it. And the United States is the great Satan and they're going to destroy it after they get done with Israel. So Israel is fighting, in a sense, for our best interest too. Not that that's their intent, but it is the result of it. And when I talked about earlier about all the countries that try to wipe out Israel and all the times that they fail, think about Iran and all the proxies they had in Gaza and the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah um, in Lebanon. And you have the Ring of Fire. They're surrounded. There's nothing they can do. And yet, you know, 2 years after October 7th, less than 2 years, they have destroyed much of that. This tiny little country just keeps on cooking. So I recommend that you are supportive and bless Israel. And for biblical reasons, but also even for reasons of supporting Western culture. I mean, Israel is our ally in a very shaky part of the world. And we have other allies in that part of the world, but they are, they can come and go pretty quickly. Israel is, you know, more consistent, to put it nicely. I guess that's all I've got to say. I hope you consider this my points. I hope you love Israel, and if you don't love them, well, I hope you pray for them. And I hope you pray for the Muslims too, and that open their eyes and lead them to the true Messiah. Hope you have a fantastic week, and may God bless you, and thank you for watching.